Hi, Kylie Dunn here. Welcome to my plan with me for August 2021. So this month I thought I'd start with something a little bit different. These are my thumbnails. This is the sort of sketching and messiness that you see while I'm trying to plot out what I'm going to do for the month. I've always done sort of the thumbnails to plan and come up with a few sort of motifs, but this month I decided I should probably draw up the motifs a little bit more and add some colour. Because of what happened last month. If you haven't listened to last month, basically colour is my Achilles heel. So I went through sort of watercolours, a few of the markers that I have, and I decided I'd do it all in watercolour because a lot of different reasons, and we'll talk about them as we go through the process. But yeah, I just found that probably watercolour gave me a better colour palette, and that's probably the thing that I'm experiencing problems with in the markers. And it's not really problems, it's just a little bit of my perfectionism kicking in, which, you know, I have to try to avoid. But hey, if I do have ways of doing it nicer, then why not? So as you might notice, it's a big double page for my title page for August, which pretty much means only one thing, and that's another pop-up for August. This one's a pretty sort of simple pop-up structure, and it sort of doesn't work, but hey, we'll talk about that later on. A little quote: I would not be at all surprised to find out the dimensions of buildings affect us in ways we don't guess, which is a Doris Lessing quote. And yeah, this month's theme is buildings. I don't know that I actually said that already. So yeah, a few structures and different bits and pieces, which buildings are fun. Like, there are a lot of different options that you can have in how you go through and what you draw. I have included some buildings in here that are real buildings, and then others where I've just sort of like grabbed bits and pieces of different buildings and joined them together. But yeah, this is the pop-up mechanism. A nice sort of simple, easy one, but I decided to use really not very thick paper to do it with, and when we come back to it at the end, you'll notice the pop-up doesn't really pop up very well because it's a very flat structure. But hey, it looks pretty, that's what matters. You'll also notice near my left hand there, you can see a little bit of the building underneath because I didn't measure properly when I was putting it all together, but hey. Okay, so this is a new page that I'm adding into my bullet journal, and this is the bonus of doing these bullet journals, because you find that you have a gap and then you think of a structure that might help you fill that gap so that you can continue to track things properly. What I've realized is that I'm getting a bit lost in my client work and not feeling on top of things because of how I do track it in my bullet journal and how I use sort of other different project sheets to manage things. So what I'm doing is I'm very briefly capturing the client, the value of the work, the bits of work that I've done, the date due, and notes. So these little blocks here are like proposal, contract, storyboard, approval, all those little bits and pieces around the client work. And I'm hoping that this will help me feel a little bit more in control of that, because it's really been feeling a little bit like it's just not working for me at the moment. So like I said, I just needed to add something in here because I do so much with my bullet journal and refer to it all the time. It's just helpful for me to have that really quick reference and go to, so that I can just feel like I'm a little bit more in control of what's going on. My health tracker and my mood tracker, of course, the value of these things has not changed over time, so they are of course remaining. And since buildings is the motif for this month, then you've got all sorts of little houses and townhouses and all sorts of things for my mood tracker. So we are into August. July went well, I guess. You know, say this with all the confidence in the world. No, July went really well. It was, of course, my birthday month, so I am now 49 and heading into my 50th year on the planet, which is, you know, a little bit daunting. Not because I'm concerned about getting old, but I always get really reflective around whether I am where I think or feel I should be. And I know there are no shoulds around any of this anyway, but you know, on reflection, I'm pretty happy with how things are going. In July, I also did a circus performance, which ended up going pretty well. We did 3 shows, which is the first time we've done it more than once, which is a bit daunting, and my body definitely was not very happy with me after the fact. But it went well, and I definitely was pushed outside my comfort zone for how I normally perform, which was fun, but again, a little daunting. So the middle motif for this week is a little bit of sort of where I live now. So that house at the top is a little bit reminiscent of our house, and then the houses going down are sort of typical of some of the houses that are in the area, little sort of just capturing concepts of some of the structures. You'll notice that there's farmland and those sorts of things. I do live in a little bit of a rural area, which is only half an hour from the capital city of the state that I live in, which is lovely. And all the way down to the bottom, which is indicative of the closest town to where we live, which isn't very big at all. So yeah, this is just a little bit of buildings in my sort of local space, I guess. It's to give a feel of those sorts of things. Because I feel buildings sort of need to sort of be in their space. So when I was sort of doing buildings, I was like, oh, I could just do buildings, or it's like, oh, well, I'm going to end up a little bit landscapey because a building is of its place. So yeah, we've got a little bit of that in there. But then this middle section is completely different because what I've done is basically a block of flats, and we can see into the windows of all of these different flats or apartments or units, whatever you wish to call them. And yeah, it's just little snippets of life. So this was fun to think of, what are some of the things that you might see if you were looking at an apartment building and, being able to see what people were doing near their windows or had in their windows or whatnot. So I put a couple of balconies in there just to add to the flexibility of what I could do with the drawings. But this was just a nice little one, little motif on, just a building and its life, I guess. So as you'll see in the last sort of page and in here, I'm basically watercolouring all of the drawings this month. So let's talk about colour and about what's been going on and those sorts of things. Now, I will readily admit that part of this is my perfectionism. I'm not going to say that it's not. And just some poor colour choices that has sort of tweaked things and made me a little bit unhappy with them. But hey, that's life. That's how things work. But the big part of it is that I'm liking the watercolouring. I like the messiness or the freedom of the colour that it gives. So, going outside the lines doesn't really matter, and then you get patches that are a little bit darker and a little bit, you just get texture in it that you don't necessarily get from using markers. So I think that's why I'm enjoying it a little bit more. But that could just be me telling myself something, I don't know. But look, this is how I feel about it. I'm enjoying a little bit of the freedom. I'm enjoying that I get to just mix colours a little bit. And I know I can do that with the markers a bit, but the paper in the journal doesn't really support easily being able to blend and merge some of the markers the way that you can if you're using like watercolour paper, for example. So, it's just nice. And I'm feeling more comfortable with it as well. So you'll see probably more watercolour as we go through. This page I definitely could have done in markers because of what it is and how it sort of works, but I still decided I'd just stick with the watercolour because I was feeling comfortable with it. Now, there is some bleeding, so you'll notice because this is a centre page of a section. So there is a little bit of bleeding that's come through from the previous page, and this page bleeds through a little bit, but I'm sort of over caring about that at the moment, which is great. I'm enjoying that I'm not getting so anal about all this stuff. It is my journal after all. It is not my sketchbook. It is not something that, basically I share for professional reasons with people. This is just the space where I get to regularly create. So in the centre of this one, it's just basically random buildings, and they are random buildings. There is nothing about a particular place with this. This was just me drawing some shapes effectively and then putting some windows and doors in them and going, yep, that's just a collection of buildings, and let's see how that goes. So yeah, we're basically in August. I can't believe it's in August already, but hey, this is how things work. You'll notice the lighting slightly different change. So everything up to this I'd done yesterday. This I finished this morning. So I actually had to move some things around. And at the moment, and I should probably mention this, normally I film with my iPhone. And one of the things that I got for my birthday was I got myself a GoPro, which is good fun. Used it to film the circus, which was great. And I'll be using it to capture some of the graphic scribing and those sorts of things that I do as well. But I also decided, well, I may as well use it to capture my bullet journal plan with me drawings. So this has been done with my GoPro this month, which sort of affects some of the setup and bits and pieces. So I had to sort of find a way to jerry-rig up the thing that I usually use with my iPhone in order to make this work. And we'll see how it goes, but I mean, it seems to work. The problem is that I recorded it in too high a resolution, which meant it took up a lot of memory cards, and it has taken quite a bit to sort of pull together and render, because it's just trying to work way too hard for how this eventually gets shared in YouTube, where the quality does not need to be at the quality that I recorded. But hey, you know, it's fun to play with all the technical things and work out how you can do it better next time. So yeah, there's been a little bit of a technical change in this whole process as well, which again is another bit of fun and just makes things interesting. So this page is a little bit different. All the drawings on this page do have a little bit of a, well, they're history for me. So the top drawing is the lighthouse in Wollongong Harbour. I grew up in Wollongong in New South Wales. So I just chose an iconic structure from there. I won't say that Wollongong doesn't have a lot of gorgeous buildings, but yeah, let's just say I chose one of the better ones. So yeah, look, that's just what it is. I could have drawn the steelworks, hey. Underneath that is, of course, Sydney Harbour. So the Sydney Harbour Bridge and the Opera House and just some standard buildings and a ferry going across to Manly. I lived in Sydney for a couple of years before moving to Melbourne, which is the next drawing underneath. So on the left-hand side of that drawing is Flinders Street Station, or a snippet of Flinders Street Station. And then the other one is actually a view from the side of the city I didn't live on. But it's a little bit prettier than the side of the city I did live on. So I decided to include that as well. Underneath that, I decided to include a couple of drawings from, well, a couple of buildings from Italy, which I did a brief backpacking holiday through when I was 27. And so we have the Colosseum and we have the Duomo in Florence. Because for me, it wasn't Italy until I got to see the Duomo in Florence. So sitting up at Fiesole and looking down, and it was, yeah, that's when I felt I was actually finally in Italy, which is random, I know, but hey, that's how it works. And then underneath that are a couple of buildings from Hobart, which is near where I live now. Well, it basically is where I live now. It's the capital city that's half an hour away from where I live now. So we have one of the buildings down at Salamanca, and we have the building on foreshore, which is sort of the museum building, which is absolutely gorgeous. So yeah, so this is a little bit of, I guess, history, my history in buildings, and yeah, it's just nice and fun to try and draw some of them. I don't think I'll really get into architectural drawing anytime soon in any really detailed way. These really are just broad representations of the buildings they are supposed to be. But yeah, it's, you know, it's fun to try and create something that lives in the real world on paper. It's just one of those nice little components. So I hope your years are going well. I hope that you're doing well, and that you're staying safe in this world that we're living in. Unfortunately, Australia has sort of kicked off a bit more with COVID, and we've got more infections going around and places locked down. So if you are in a place where you're having to go through that, then I hope that you're looking after yourselves and everything is going as well as it can go. It's still a very weird time, and I really hope that you're finding a way to sort of look after your mental health. This is a great way to look after your mental health. Doing that sort of creating is a lovely way to just keep yourself very focused on what's actually happening, and making yourself a little bit more mindful and calming your brain if that's what's going on for you, which is unfortunate. So yeah, August will be another busy month, and I'm sorry that this didn't go up earlier, but I'd planned to do it all on Friday, and then my toothache turned into having to go see the dentist, and we don't need to get into that. But let's just say that drawing it up on Friday was really not something I was going to do, which is why it sort of had to happen a bit over the weekend. And of course, we're now into the 1st of August, but hey, that's life, and we'll all live with it. I'm sure that none of you will significantly suffer if this doesn't turn up until the 2nd of August in your worlds. So that's all fine and good as well. So then this is really my bullet journal for August. So going through and looking at that pop-up again, you'll see it doesn't sort of pop up very well, but like I said, hey, it looks really pretty and I'm happy with that. So it is what it is. I'm very happy with how it sort of, all the colours came together and how it all looks. Client work, so we'll see how that goes. And then all the other standard pages that we have as we go through. So I hope you enjoyed my plan with me for this month, and I shall see you again in September. Thanks.